All right, well, this is the first episode for the uh, Prisoner rewatch, Patrick McGoohan's 1967 British television series. So, hopefully, you watched the first episode, Arrival, which was the pilot, and we'll get into talking about this. So, let's just get into talking about the opening credits of the show, or the opening sequence. What we have is we see a man. All right, he doesn't. There's no name. We don't know any context for anything that's happening. It's just we see Patrick McGoohan driving in his Lotus 7, and he goes to his boss, his supervisor, and he resigns from his job as a spy. We see him like getting very upset, pounding his fist on the table, throwing down his letter of resignation, and walking out. And then we see him speeding home to his flat and packing his luggage. And a hearse follows him, and a man, in a hat walks up and blows smoke, some sort of gas through the keyhole, and Patrick McGoohan passes out. Now, he doesn't have a name, okay? He's unnamed in the series. So we have him waking up, and this is going to start the episode entry. Now, this opening sequence that we have here essentially is an exposition, visual. It kind of frames like what's going on and sets everything up for this world that we're about to enter into. And it's going to be the same opening for pretty much all 17 episodes of the show. So we have this guy. We don't know who he is. Of course, people would be very familiar with Patrick McGoohan as an actor, okay, when this show came out in 1967, because he had a very successful television series called Danger Man, which came out or premiered in 1960 and ran for 4 seasons. There were 86 episodes, and here in the United States, the show was called Secret Agent, and of course, the song Secret Agent Man, okay, that's quite a famous pop culture song. It's even appeared in the Austin Powers films. That show, Secret Agent, ran here in the States, and it was the Americanized, version of the show, essentially. But McGoohan was the highest paid actor in the UK at the time when this show came out, and he had been offered the role of James Bond and turned it down because he was a devout Roman Catholic. And if you've ever watched Danger Man, you'll see that his character that he plays in that series, John Drake, does not use guns. There are a few episodes where he does use a firearm, but he really doesn't use firearms, and he doesn't get involved really in womanizing or anything. So McGoohan himself is of Irish descent, and his character in Danger Man, at least in series 1 or the first season of Danger Man, was a Irish American who worked for NATO as a agent for NATO and some agent group. We're talking about Cold War here. It gets readjusted or retconned in later seasons of Danger Man, where he's now a British citizen and he has more of a British accent, and he's working for an organization with British intelligence called M9, which is essentially a fictionalized version of MI6. But yeah, so people would be very familiar with McGoohan because it was a really, really popular show. So this is one of the sources of contention that people have been debating for years: is his character in The Prisoner the same character? Because it's essentially a character that resigned from his job. We have no reason for why he resigned. And it's very meta, in that McGoohan resigned from Danger Man and really didn't give a reason for it. So it's kind of like the two parallel each other in a way, but he went on to uh, after the 86 episodes of Danger Man, he went on to do The Prisoner. So we're going to talk about episode number 1. It's called Arrival. This debuted originally on September 29th, 1967. The episode was written by George Markstein and David Tomlin. Both of those gentlemen were involved with Danger Man. It's directed by Don Chaffee. The character, okay, so we'll just get into it. There's this character named Number 2, who's really the chief antagonist of the series. Number 2 in this episode is played by Guy Dolman, and then the second Number 2 that's going to appear here is played by George Morris Baker. So Patrick McGoohan's character, and I'm just going to call him Number 6 from here on out, because even though he doesn't get his title until later in the show, in the pilot episode, he will be designated as Number 6 throughout the duration of the series. And you'll see this whole thing about the erasure of the individuals' names. It's kind of like everybody is just designated as a number, and they just become like a part of this, whatever you want to call it, collective almost. It's very collectivist, very much like the Borg in Star Trek, right? Star Trek The Next Generation, where people are designated, the Borg are designated by numbers, 7 of 9, etc. So McGoohan wakes up in the village, and the village here where this was filmed is a town in North Wales. It's called Portmeirion. Portmeirion appears in the very first episode of Danger Man, and McGoohan, when he went to do The Prisoner, decided to go to this location. All the exterior shots are filmed here in Portmeirion. It's a very unique looking location, and I think there's prisoner conventions that take place there every year to this day. But he wakes up, he looks out the window, and he wakes up basically in his flat, but it's not really his flat. It is a complete mock-up. It looks exactly like his room, but it's not his house. And when he looks out, he realizes that he's not where he should be. He's not in London. He's trying to figure out where he is. So he goes out to the scouts, and this Asian woman pulls up in a cart, and he tries to get information from her, and she gives him a ride. She tells him that there's Poles and Czechs that are in this village, and he's like, what are Poles and Czechs doing here? Because this is the Cold War, so these are Eastern Bloc countries, right, in the USSR. So he's trying to figure out like who controls this village, and it will be referred to simply as that, the village. This is the location that the prisoner takes place in. And he, it's very much under surveillance, right? Like everything's being surveilled. All of your movement, everything that you say, it's all being recorded. There's cameras and microphones everywhere. So it's basically a George Orwellian nightmare. He takes a ride with this lady who then asks him to pay in credits. So we're like, there's no cash. It's like a cashless society in the village. And he gets returned to his flat in the village, and then he immediately receives a phone call from Number 2 telling him to meet him in the Green Dome. He goes to the Green Dome, and basically you can see that there's surveillance taking place. He discusses, he has a conversation with Number 2, trying to get information from Number 2, and Number 2 is trying to get information from him. Number 2 wants to know why he resigned from the agency that he worked for. Specifically, he quotes here and says, "A lot of people are curious what lies behind your resignation. You've had a brilliant career. They want to know why you suddenly left." And his loyalty gets questioned, and he's pretty much informed that he knows too much, okay, from his intelligence work to simply be allowed to walk away. We find out that this village is a place where all of these ex-spies, these ex-operatives have all been placed in the village, and why are they here? Because they know too much, essentially. So he gets very belligerent, and then he tries. There's some other scenes that take place, but he's basically shown around and shown like you cannot escape from here, essentially. But number 6 does try to escape, and he is captured by Rover. Now Rover is this giant white weather balloon looking, I think it actually is a weather balloon, but its powers are kind of ill-defined. We don't know what it is, but it's essentially a roving sentry, and I don't think it's mentioned by name in this episode, but this roving sentry that takes out people and captures them, or basically keeps them imprisoned in the village. So he gets captured by Rover. He tries to fight Rover, but he's unsuccessful, and he wakes up in the hospital at the village, where he meets a former colleague named Cobb. And he starts to question Cobb, and Cobb gets taken away by the village hospital staff. He then is informed that Cobb has committed suicide by jumping from a window. Now, number 6 leaves the hospital, and he goes to the Green Dome to confront number 2, but it's a new number 2. So the number 2 we had at the beginning of the episode, which was played by Guy Dolman, has been replaced by George Morris Baker, and he's informed that the number 2 changes from time to time. So this is going to be another staple of the series. We're going to have a different number 2 pretty much almost in every episode of the show. Some of the number 2s will come back, but it leads to the question of who is number 1? Who does number 2 work for, right? This is a big question of the show. And it's at this point, when he confronts the new number 2, that he is given his designation as number 6. And he does not want to be known as a number. And he gives kind of the thesis statement, or the mission statement, or whatever you want to call it, the theme of the entire series, in a very iconic quote, where Patrick McGoohan, with a lot of vehemence and anger, says, "I will not make any deals with you. I've resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, or numbered. My life is my own." It's at this point that he then observes Cobb's funeral, which is a very strange. The village is very strange. Everybody is dressed strange. Everybody acts strange. So there's this funeral with this band playing very upbeat music. This will be a recurring thing. We're going to see a lot of, just the opening credits, right, with the hearse. We're going to see a lot of association with death, funerals, this type of stuff in this series. So it's something to pay attention to. But he sees this lady, which we'll find out is number 9, and he kind of follows her around and sees her at one point talking to number 2. But she says to him that she was working with Cobb on a way to escape from the village, and he does not trust her. Number 6 does not trust this woman, but she gives him an electropass, which will incapacitate Rover so that he can try to escape. So he gets the electropass. He uses it to board a helicopter to try to escape from the village, but the controls are overridden by number 2, who is watching him on a monitor, because everything is under surveillance, like I said. And number 6 is taken back by remote, landed, and returned to his flat. And it's at the closing of the episode we realize Cobb did not commit suicide. Cobb is actually alive and he's working with number 2 and the people in the village. And Cobb tells number 2, he says that number 6 is going to be a tough nut to crack. Now, this is just the setup for the show. There's really not a lot of really weird stuff that happens in this episode. The weird stuff is yet to come. This is really the setup for the show, the pilot, that's establishing kind of the rules, kind of the tropes that are going to play out throughout the series, with McGoohan's character, number 6, trying to escape, with number 2, the various number 2s trying to extract information from number 6. And the real key point of this series is wanting to know, why did number 6 resign? We'll have further discussion about this in the next episode, Chimes of Big Ben. So I will link that in the description box, and you can watch it. Now, I want to say something about the various places you can watch the show. This is available on Tubi. You can also watch it at Shout Factory, and you can also watch it here on YouTube. But I will tell you that Chimes of Big Ben, the episode here on YouTube, there is a problem with it. Towards the end of the episode, it freezes for like a full 40 or 50 seconds, and it does continue playing, but it skips a whole portion of conversation. Now, you can watch that if you want to, but you may want to go to Tubi to watch Chimes of Big Ben, because the episode that's here on YouTube does have a play problem. So that's pretty much it. I don't really have a whole lot to say concerning this episode, because it is just basically a pilot which sets up the universe that this series is going to take place in. But in my headcanon, okay, as far as when I watched the show, I watched this as if this is John Drake from Danger Man, because just like in Danger Man, McGoohan's character here, he doesn't use firearms. He uses, his fist, essentially, and his wits, just like Danger Man does. So I know that McGoohan is denied in interviews that the number 6 is John Drake, but there are other people that worked on the show that view it the same way and say that he is John Drake. So I just consider this to be a spin-off or a continuation of Danger Man, Secret Agent. And that's the way I watch it. So I'll link the second episode below. Like I said, I would recommend watching it either on Tubi or at Shout Factory. And next time we'll have something more to talk about. And I'm going to try to keep these brief. This was a little bit longer, probably because I had some stuff to talk about as far as setup. But yeah, there will be pretty much a new number 2. And the intro to the show will be a little bit different next time around. And you'll see what I mean if you've never seen this before. But this whole theme of, I am not a number, I'm a free man, my life is my own. That's really what this show is about. It's the individual versus collectivism. All right, thanks for watching. Till next time, be seeing you.